All right, let's get going here. So, how are things? Wins or successes? Give me some good news. I know, see, and it's all right as they say that, then Dallin always walks in. I can count on Dallin for
There
sure.
we go. Bring it. What are we doing?
Look, guess.
Yeah.
I got one.
See? Yeah, okay, wins or successes. See, there is a correlation that he sits on the front row, he has a win.
I just need all the help I can get in this business. So.
Okay?
So I was at the store last night, and the guy behind me, I was getting groceries. I was supposed to just get milk, and I walked away spending $90. So there you go. But the
That doesn't sound like a win to me.
Yeah, no, that was awful. But the guy behind me, I noticed had a lead paint exposure. Like he was just making copies, and so I was like, oh, are you in real estate? He's like, well, I kind of invest and kind of flip houses, whatever. And I told him I was an agent. I gave him a card, and then I walked out to my car, and then he came and we talked at my car for like 45 minutes because he had all these questions, and he does some really high end. So he buys properties somewhere in the 2 to 3 range and sells them for 7 to 8. Like, you know, he puts in a lot of money and additions and stuff. And essentially, he says, I don't have like a specific agent I work with. I've used some agents here and there, but I'd love to use you to try to sell some properties and see how it goes. So
Nice.
he's gonna reach out and we're gonna get some stuff going.
Awesome. Good man. Congratulations. Good job. Good. Who else? What are the wins or successes? What good things? I was going to say, Colby, if you don't say something, I'll call on you. Okay.
Yesterday I just went door knocking for about a couple hours on holiday, and I was able to add 2 to my SOI. Talked to him for a long time, and I got 3 appointments.
Good job. Congratulations. So, hey, here's what I want to talk briefly on that, though, real quick, because he and I had a conversation prior to going out door knocking yesterday, which, as an FYI, at 9 o'clock, we always leave from here to go out door knocking on Wednesdays. So, for those of you that are in this office, you know, be here at 8:45, we go out at 9. But, so, here's what I want to talk about, though, is Colby, and you can add to or take away from whatever I say here if you want, but he wanted to meet yesterday, and we sat down to talk for a minute. He was kind of like, I don't know the process, and you know, I want to make sure I understand what's the process you take somebody through, and so we talked a little bit about it. But then he had said, and are you okay with me talking about this?
Go for it.
Okay, so he had mentioned that like the day before, so this was Wednesday that we're talking, on Tuesday, right? You had gone out to go door knocking, and kind of parked the car and kind of sat there going, oh, I don't know what, you know. Tell them what your thoughts. What were you thinking at that time?
I was thinking that ever since I've been wanting to get in real estate, I had this neighborhood in mind. I don't know why, I just was attracted to it. Had a good vibe from it. You know, so I went to the neighborhood. Like, I want to make sure I look professional. So I debated, like, try to have a business card, and I talked about that, and make sure I look professional. You know, and what exactly should I say? And fearing the yes, if I get a yes. You know, if I get the appointment, am I ready for that? Am I ready to know exact documents need to be filled out and that type of stuff? Make sure I do it accurately and professionally.
Yeah. So, had anybody else feel that way? Yeah. So here was the conversation that we had, though. Is like I said, look at it this way. Like, meaning it is going to be a process. You are learning and understanding this. So don't. What you can't do is say, I'm going to stay on the sidelines until I know what I'm doing, and then I'll go out and start prospecting and talking to people. Instead, like how I approached it with them is, what's the worst thing that could happen? So, like Annika, what's the very worst thing that could happen if you went out door knocking?
Somebody gets mad at you.
Okay, yeah, so somebody gets mad at you, slams the door or whatever, but let's say that happened in like every single door that happened with. And you got, I mean, that's never going to happen, by the way. But let's say it did. And you go back to your car, what did you get?
Experience.
So for sure you got experience out of it. But, and even if you like got no leads, was kind of my point of, even if you got no leads out of that, and then what happened is you went back to the office or whatever, and was like, okay, I got no leads out of it. How many leads would have you got if you didn't go?
0.
You know what I mean? So you got to see, so that's what I was telling Kobe, is I'm like, the best thing you guys can do is just say, you know what, I don't know it all, and I probably am never going to. I mean, 20 years later for me, I still don't, I'm learning stuff along the way. So look at it as, you know what, I'm gonna go out, because what happens though if you go out and do it and then you accidentally get a few appointments? Then you're really scared, right? Because now I don't know what to do, right? Well, we'll help you with that, so.
There's a idea that I had heard from my wife about this concept of prospecting and a way to motivate yourself to get no's is if you figure out what your averages are in terms of conversion, you can mathematically like break that down so every no is worth
Yeah, so many
$10 or something like that. So every no you go to, that's just another $10 for the ultimate yes commission that comes at the end of the amount of no's
Yeah,
you get.
perfect, good.
So you're like, oh, it's worth $10 to talk to this person to yell at me.
Yeah, and so yes, you're exactly right. And the point is though, he went out and did it. And what happened? Got some appointments and things. So I mean, some good things happen as you go out and do it. So my message for that piece of it for you guys is just don't wait. Don't think, well, I can't go and start doing it yet because whatever. I mean, a great time to do it is show up here on Wednesday because we go out and we'll match people up. So we'll get you with somebody that is an experienced agent and you can go 2 doors with them for that first few times. So, don't wait. Good.
And that also helped me because I went with
John Aubrey.
John Aubrey, and I just kind of shadowed him to help boost my confidence and to see somebody else do it and kind of help motivate me and see how the relationship goes between actually talking to somebody in person.
Mhm.
It was nice to see that as well.
Yeah, so good. So now, next week, somebody can shadow you, right? Because you
Sure.
got 3 appointments, right? So, okay, good. Good. Any other wins or successes? What good things? Okay, well, what questions do you have then? This is going to be a great group for you. You're just going to sit here and say,
30 minutes.
If I've got somebody wanting to do a new build, but we're not finding anything that's working, and so we found a lot with a certain price. As far as that transaction goes, and buying a lot and then finding a builder, essentially my commission is just for the lot, right? Or
unless you can get the builder to agree to pay you a commission on the build job.
to get them to be hired there.
Good. All right, any other questions before I turn the floor over to Phil? Okay, so do you want anything real quick?
Yeah, I just,
Hold on.
again, well, I've had an opportunity to meet, had an introduction with most of you here and maybe talk with somebody on the phone. But I'm Paul Jolly with Citywide, just across the foyer. And again, if we can be of help in any regard, we're really, really good on if you have leads or other follow-ups that are stale, really good on following up in your behalf to bring them to a point of you closing the business. So if we can be of help in that regard, just let us know. We love to make outbound reaches to everybody. We're not afraid to do that. So anyway, thank you.
Okay, excellent. Thank you. Okay, so for today's class, so today's the mortgage class. So Phil's going to be teaching. So and I guess you've brought some company. Do you have others coming too, or just the 2 of you?
I just brought the big one.
Just the big dog. Okay, good. So anyway, they're going to come up and to help you through. So please, if you've got questions about things, ultimately what I want you guys to understand is like when somebody comes in and does a loan application, like then what happens? What goes on after that so that you can understand the process and what questions and things you should be asking along the way. What are some good things? So as they're up here talking, ask questions and find out what the process looks like and help you to understand. So the idea for me is for you as you're working with a client and they're saying, how come they keep calling me and asking for this? And how come I already gave them 2 months of bank statements and now it's 2 months later and they're asking for 2 months more of bank statements or whatever. I mean, I want you to have an understanding of those type of things so you know what's going on along the way. So, sound good? So, anyway, Phil, with that. Phil, I've actually known Phil for I don't know how many years, a lot. So,
A lot.
Anyway, we were both at former companies
I
that
had
were sisters. And
Brown hair when I met him.
that's right.
Full.
They didn't even laugh.
It's all right, I'll
So
wake him
good
up.
luck. Yeah. So
I'll either
anyway,
wake you up or put you to sleep.
so Phil's got it, and then just whatever I've got another thing I'm going to step out to. So you guys
Okay.
are taken care of.
Okay, if you pay me enough money, I'll just make it real short. My name's Phil Fidler. I've been in the business for 26 years. And I also work with your hopefully preferred lender, Citywide Home Loans across the hall. What Russ asked me to talk about is what happens once you guys get a home under contract and you send your client to us. Why does it take 30 to 40 days to get a loan approved? And that's kind of the antithesis of what this is about. So, you guys, hi Natalie.
Hi.
So, let's just go from the beginning. You guys end up, you get a lead, they want to go see a house. Hopefully you are all having them talk to a lender first, going through and getting it credit approved. So what we do is we'll either meet with your client, we can take their information over the phone, or they can do it online. We pull a 3-file merged credit report. We ask, a lot of times we don't get them, but we ask to see their bank statements, pay stubs, tax returns, and W-2s. Okay? It's okay if they don't give them to us if they're honest. Okay? Some people, yeah, they're not so honest. So they think they are, but you know, there's a different, I guess there's a different measuring stick as to what somebody believes to be income and what we can use as qualified income. So everything's going along fine. We've talked to your client, we've pulled their credit, they have good credit scores, they have the income to do the program they're trying to accomplish, and we will help them with that too, letting them know what different types of loan programs are available to them. And you guys then go and mess the whole thing up by putting them under contract. I mean, everything was fine until that happened. So I'm kind of a smart aleck, so just take that at face value. So now we're under contract, and now the fun begins. So this is what Russ wanted me to talk to you about. What happens once you walk over and say, Paul, here's a contract. Phil, here's a contract. You know, get them in here. What happens now? I was thinking about this last night of how many eyes actually look at a contract, every single contract. And it's scary. And this is why it sometimes takes a little while. So I figured the best way to talk about this would be just to maybe do a little diagram. So you've got somebody under contract, and now it's time to do the dreaded loan. Okay, I want you guys to help me out. Who in the mortgage department do you think is going to have a direct responsibility and a direct obligation to work on this? Loan officer, of course. That's the first person that sees it. So you got your loan officer. You won't know this, but we all have what are called LOAs. That's our loan officer assistant. They're the ones that actually do all the hard and heavy lifting. A lot of people, think we do it. They're the ones that do the real work. Okay, they're integral at communicating with the borrower, getting paperwork, doing all that. So you got your borrower, and they come in, and we fill out all the loan paperwork, and then what happens next? We've also, at this point, gotten their full tax returns, their bank statements, their pay stubs for the last 30 days, their W-2s. They're self-employed, we have to have business tax returns, social security cards, driver's license, homeowner's insurance information. These are all, that's a standard set of documents that a borrower is going to bring in when they're making a loan application, okay? Okay, we now turn this over to our loan officer assistant who enters it all in our database and works through that. So the next thing we have to do, because of the new guidelines, is order disclosures, okay? So in order to do that, we have to send the information to our disclosure department. They're not gonna send out anything until the compliance department has looked over everything. Okay? So we feed all the information in, they review everything, they make sure that the property type's right, that the loan amount's right, more important than anything, that the fees that we're quoting that are going to be charged for this are correct. And they enter all this into a system, it's all tracked by the government, it's tracked by our company, it's tracked by us. And once all that's been prepared, then the documents are finally sent to the borrower. I would say 98% of all of them do it electronically now. It's the easiest way. For a full hour before I came here this morning, I've got a 70-year-old couple that are buying a home on a VA loan. They don't know what email is. Do you believe that? They truly don't. They don't have an email address. So we had to do it all by, the old-fashioned way, by hand. But what happens is as soon as these documents are prepared, they're sent to the borrower. They go in and acknowledge it. They go in and there's a whole slew of documents. For these guys, I printed off 105 pages. Those aren't all just signature pages, but that's about how many pages are in there. It does include a booklet that the feds make us send out that is probably 30 pages long that they don't have to sign. It's just kind of a how-to. But it's an extensive amount of paperwork is the bottom line. So your client can go in to our website, into the loan document portal. They all have an account. They go in there and they can go through these documents and they click sign, okay, e-sign, everything. And then once they're through with that, they submit it. They come back into our system and they upload, okay? So now everything is, we've got their financials, we've got their initial loan documents back. At some point, either before disclosures or at this point, we have to send it to the lock desk or lock department. Okay, we gotta decide on what kind of interest rate they're gonna get, what kind of loan program they're gonna get. We talk to your client. We say, a lot of them will say, well, what are the interest rates gonna do tomorrow? What are they gonna do next week? You guys will be asked that. For 26 years, I've said interest rates are gonna do one of three things. They're either gonna go up, they're gonna go down, they're gonna stay the same. And trust me, if any of us knew any different, we wouldn't be here. We would be at the Chicago Board of Trade, trading securities and retired and in Hawaii or wherever. Okay, nobody knows. Truly. You may know on a day-to-day basis where things are going, but with the way the world is now, you don't know. You don't know when a terrorist attack's coming. You don't know when a government's gonna collapse. You don't know what's gonna be in an unemployment report. There's reports that come out weekly that could move that market, and everything could be going along great, and all of a sudden one day you come in and all the bond traders just decided to take a lot of profit. And you walk in and all of a sudden, boom, the rates are 0.25% worse than they were the day before. You don't know. So I personally recommend to people that they lock their loan in as soon as possible. I will tell you what the rate is, and do you like that rate? Yeah, that's a pretty decent rate. Can you live with that rate? Yeah, I can live with that payment, I can live with that rate. Okay, then why are we waiting? Because maybe the rates will go down, okay? Guess what? Maybe the rates will go up too. And I tell them, trust me, if your rate goes down and you save $10 a month, how long are you gonna remember that? Maybe once. It goes up, you're paying an extra 10 or an extra 20 every time you make a payment, you're gonna remember that a lot longer. Okay, so we always counsel them, let's lock it in. Let's get this thing done, you know what you're getting, and we know how long we need to lock it in, and everything, works along fine. Okay, so the lock department now has their hands in it. Okay, so now we got everything back, and now it goes to processing department. And it goes to her. Operations manager. Okay, so everything's back, and what do we do with it now? Well, somebody's got to get title involved, right? Somebody's got to get appraisal involved. Somebody's got to order and confirm the tax returns that they gave us. Nowadays, because of places like TurboTax, believe it or not, some people bring in tax returns that may not be what they send to the IRS. They don't do it as much now as they used to, because we catch them now. But that was a big deal several years ago. People would bring in tax returns that were self-employed, and they'd show like their gross receipts as income. They wouldn't take off any deductions. Their gross receipts was 125. They maybe took 5,000. Hey, I made 120 grand this year. Well, when it goes to the IRS, they'd have to pay a lot of taxes if they had that, right? Okay, well, nobody wants to pay taxes. So they give us that so they can qualify for more loan, then they go home, they take off all their deductions and they send it in and they make 40,000 bucks. Okay, that was a huge deal when these self-tax websites popped up. So because of that, we are now required to have them sign what's called a 4506T form, which allows us to contact the IRS and request copies of tax transcripts. Okay, so we get those back and we look at those versus their tax returns and make sure all those numbers add up. Okay, if they don't, guess what? They've just committed loan fraud. Okay, so that's something else that the processor does. Now we have, how many loans did our branch close last week? By the way, I haven't even introduced you to this lovely lady. This is Penny Newford. She is our operations manager, and she manages our entire pipeline. So every loan that goes into our system from any of our loan officers, how many loan officers do we have that you're over?
15, 18.
19? 19 loan officers, okay? All sending loans in, and she's a savior. Her job, and I'm gonna let her talk about it more in detail, but is to manage it. She knows when your loans close. She knows when everybody's loans close. She knows when deadlines are. She knows when things should be moving through and they have to be at certain points to get there, okay? She knows which processor has 50 loans and which has 40 loans, so who can take on more business. She answers questions for us ad nauseum, I'm sure, with all the different loan program questions, exceptions, all that stuff. But all this is going on while the contract's kind of still in the infancy. So processor is getting verifications of employment, verifying assets, ordering the tax transcripts, doing a bunch of reports I don't even know about, behind the scenes, different kind of checks, fraud alerts, all kinds of things. And they're putting all of this information together so they can have a complete file, okay? So they order, well, okay, so title report comes in, appraisal comes in, all of the verifications come back that match up to their pay stubs, that they haven't been manufactured as well. Tax receipts come in, or transcripts come in. All of this information gets put together, and we've got a complete file, and so who gets to see it then? We got a complete file. Where are we gonna send it? To you? That's okay. We send it to underwriting, okay? The dreaded underwriter. The people everybody loves to hate, you know? Tough job, but somebody's gotta do it. That's a horrible G. Sorry about my handwriting. Okay, underwriter gets it. Okay, borrowers are going, well, wait a minute, you sent me a letter that said I was credit approved. Why does an underwriter have to look at this? Well, when we credit approve or pre-approve or pre-qualify, you're gonna hear that term, and everybody's gonna ask you when you put an offer in, where's your pre-approval letter from your lender? Okay, when we're doing that, we're running their information through an online underwriting system, okay? The information that we put in, or the results, is only as good as the information we put in. Okay, if we find out that there's information in there that's, you can't document, substantiate, if it's not real, then it's gonna change things. So it's, basically trash in, trash out, get in, get out, okay? Okay, so that's what we've done. We have taken that information that they have provided us, along with their credit report, along with the loan scenario that we're looking at, run that through either Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, GUS if they're doing rural housing, FHA, VA, Utah Housing. We're running it through their systems and hoping to get what they call an approve eligible. We get that says, if you can prove and substantiate what you have told us, under this scenario, we will approve that loan, okay? So now, you got it all, in the underwriting department, they're the ones that go through and verify it. They go through with a fine little pen and go, yep, they got the money here, but as I look through the bank statements, there's like 3 really large deposits, and it's just cash. Where'd that come from? Okay, there's a condition that's coming right back to us. I had this happen. I was just talking to Penny about this. I had a borrower 3 weeks ago that had sent us a bank statement, and then we had to get another one because his earnest money had finally cleared his account. So we get this, and on there are 3 deposits. One was 42 and change, one was 26, and one was 1,800. All cash deposits. Where'd it come from? He needed this money to close on his loan, but they're not going to just take cash. He could have gone out and maxed out a bunch of credit cards, right? Taking cash advances, hoping we wouldn't find out about it. He could have had his buddies at work giving money. He could have borrowed some cash from his boss or something, thrown it in. You have to verify those funds. So we call him up and ask him what it was. He goes, stuff I sold on eBay. I go, okay, prove you owned it. Show us your listings from eBay. Show us the sales. Show us the money as it went into your PayPal account. And then you move that into this account, we're good. I can't do that. Why? Well, I didn't sell it in my name. I have a friend that sells all this stuff for me. And then he just gives me the money. Like, okay, can you still get us the listings and then show him giving you that money? He goes, oh yeah, no problem. So he sends us this spreadsheet. And this was just on this one. I'm not lying here, am I? 335 entries on this Excel spreadsheet of these little trinkets he was selling on eBay. It was like Disney stuff, like a little pin that you put on here, or a pin like this, or a twirly thing. I have no idea. This guy got all this stuff because he went to one of those storage locker things, you know, that you bid for a storage locker. He gets this storage locker, he opens it up, and there's all this little Queen so-and-so and Mickey
Princess.
Mouse and over 300, I mean, things selling for 79 cents, $1.29, $4.43, blah, 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 blah. And that was just this one.
It does add up.
But he couldn't go in and print off 335 sales receipts and show all that money going here and coming out and all that. So guess what? We went, yeah, we aren't using it. Sorry. Okay, it happens. You know, it happens.
But if he had it in his name and was able to print it all out,
Absolutely.
okay, so that's something to think about for your own.
What happened to the Safe Paper Act? That would have been.
Yeah. Yeah. We often ask that question as they create more and more forms. We have this has nothing to do with what I'm talking about. My favorite new form of all forms that a borrower signs at closing, that I've been doing this over 25 years, and this just started becoming reality, I think it was just this year. Did you know now that when your borrowers go in and sign their final documents, one of the forms they're required to sign states that we are letting you know that if you do not make your mortgage payment, that your lender does have the right to report that to the credit bureaus, and they can put that on your credit report, and it may have an adverse impact on your credit scores. Can you believe we have to let people know that?
It sounds elementary, I mean, obviously, yeah.
Almost every form that a buyer signs at a closing is because of a former lawsuit. Somebody somewhere along the line said, I was not instructed that if I didn't make my payment that they could report that to the bureau and it would affect my score, and then I was gonna get a higher interest rate on my money.
It's only obvious.
So I'm gonna sue you. That's kind of how things go. All right, I digress.
How, with this example of those funds there, how does that differ also than, from like gifting money? There's like a more of a process of a form or a letter or
Right.
something, right?
Yeah, if anybody is receiving gift funds, we're required to have a gift letter filled out. It has to be a family member. Well, in most cases, it has to be a family member.
Family, very, very close friend, domestic partner.
So you have to put their name, their relationship, the property it's tied to, the amount that they're giving. The party giving the gift signs it, the party receiving it signs it, and then we have to show that money coming in. Now, that can be different based on what kind of loan program you do. Okay, some loan programs, we have to actually get a copy of that bank statement that shows that gift was put in there. And then we have to show it going from there to the title company or there to the borrower. And then the borrower has to confirm that the money came in. Other types of loans, you can just send it directly to the title company upon verification, okay? So I don't want to get into that, that's too deep. But anyway, all right, so we work through all this stuff. We try and massage and do different things to figure out how we can get around all these conditions that the underwriter so needlessly comes out with. But, the moral of the story, guys, and this is what I would say to your borrowers if they're giving you a hard time about, I can't believe all this stuff they're making me do. This is ridiculous. How many times in a person's life do they go in and ask somebody to trust them and loan them $200,000?
Or even more. Yeah.
Okay? Seriously. It's not a $50 JCPenney credit card. It's not a $100 or $500 Visa card.
It's not RC Willie.
It's $200,000. It's $400,000. People do that maybe, I don't know, 2, 3, 4 times in their whole lifetime. Okay? Paul.
In context, there are companies out there that, you get on the internet, you'll be on their email blast, and it'll say things like, we'll get your loan covered in 24 to 48 hours. Can you speak to that in terms of the reality based upon what takes place in the process?
Well, the reality of somebody saying they can do it in 48 hours is, it's a lie. And all they're doing at that point is giving us, well, we got your client before he went out to buy the house. Okay? Yeah, you're approved. There may be a few things you need, and then they get to go through this entire process, but they make it look like it's lightning quick. Let me ask a question. You have a home under contract, you just put it under contract, how fast can you close that one? The very fastest ever in the history of the world, from the day you went under contract. When can you go sign? Let's say they put a house under contract and they come right to my office, and we do the loan application that day.
30 days.
How fast can you sign?
16 days.
30, 16, 3
weeks.
3 weeks.
I'm only thinking because you have to give them disclosures 3 days before they can close. So even if you got everything done, you would still have the 3 days before, but they had to look at the disclosures before you can close.
Tell them.
It's 7. 7, you have to have per TRID, the earliest you could sign a loan from the day the disclosures went out to the clients is 7 days. Yep. But everybody knows in that world with an appraisal and a title and property inspections, 7 days.
Is that 7 business days?
7
Yes,
days.
so it's really 8
So
days.
it's 2 weeks.
Because Sundays don't
It's
count.
2 weeks.
So if you took the application on, or sent the disclosures on Monday, you would have Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday counts unless it's a holiday, and then Monday. So the earliest you could close would be Tuesday on the 8th day.
On the 8th day. Paul.
It's really important because there's a lot of individuals out there, they're selling their houses and they don't understand the industry. They don't understand what you do, what the process is. And a lot of them are under the misconception that, oh, we can get this done in a week's time. You guys got to step on it and really make it happen. And, theoretically that might be the case, but when you're dependent on an appraiser to go out and other people to do certain things, it makes it, so you got to kind of educate them and, okay, this is the reality, and try to inform them as to what takes place.
So the 3 days that you keep hearing about and that you mentioned, anytime something changes and we have to redisclose something, then that puts 3 days on. Once the closing disclosure has gone out and been accepted, then that's another 3-day clock that starts, okay? So, all right, so I'm gonna let Penny talk for a few minutes because I know she has to get back upstairs, and just kind of tell you what happens when we send the file upstairs and it goes to the processing and to the loan officer assistants and all the different things that they're required to do to get these things ready to go to underwriting. So you want to just talk about that for a few minutes?
Hello, hi Penny. If I ever see you guys, just say hello. I love coffee, I like beer. And people that tell you that it's a prerequisite to drink in this business, I would agree with them. I don't usually talk at these kind of things. I've been in mortgage for 22, 23 years. I started in the shipping department at Crossland Mortgage down on 41st South and State Street. So I've been doing pretty much everything from start to finish. I love this business. I can't imagine not ever doing it. You can always learn something. There's always something new. TRID. I'm sure a lot of you have been dealing with a lot of that since October of last year. We are now in our 6th month of TRID, and so there's a lot of different things that we have to always make sure that we're doing everything on time and in a certain speed and everything. Sorry, I don't mean to talk in front of people a whole lot. So what I do basically is I see every single file that comes into processing. As soon as it comes into processing, I'm notified. I know every file, I know every loan officer, I know this sounds kind of silly, 150 loans, I know. I know what situations they are, I know what I've pre-approved, I know what I've qualified, that kind of stuff. And I pay attention, first of all, I write down the financing and appraisal deadlines, and I write down the settlement deadline. So those are my first 2 things, are the most important thing to me on every single loan. Then I put it on a spreadsheet, and I put every single loan on that spreadsheet by processor and loan officer. And so I track it that way. So if I see, okay, it came into processing today, I give it 2 days to have everything back to the processor. Everything, she's reviewed everything from income, assets, if there's title in the file, anything that's in there, she reviews, makes sure there's letters of explanation about where they've lived. So if they, application-wise, they fill out an application saying, hey, I've been in Taylorsville for 5 years, but you pull credit and they've been at 4 other residences, there's something fishy going on there. So we have to get letters of explanation. Maybe they went to school and they have a P.O. box and they have their mail sent there. Maybe their mail's going to their parents' house. You know, little things like that. That's not a big deal, but these are things that we have to figure out and know why. So when it goes to the underwriter doesn't come back and say, okay, what are these 4 addresses? They're already in the file, so we've already explained to her what these are. Same thing with pay stubs, tax returns. We want to know, you know, why are all these deductions? Is he getting child support taken out? Why does it say ORS, which is child support? There's just a lot of different angles that we have to look at. We're not just looking, you know, for, oh, pre-approval. It's like Phil was saying, it's an approve eligible. It doesn't matter. As long as you put in that model what could approve, it can approve. So you have to go back and you have to go deeper to make sure everything that you have on that application is verified and meets this loan approval. So as soon as that gets done, usually about 2 days at minimum, we like to have the processor send it to underwriting. Then the underwriter has about 48 hours to review the file, look through everything, tell us what is needed, what is missing, questions that she sees that the processor missed or the loan officer missed. So it's just I know it sounds monotonous that it's verified and re-verified and looked at and re-looked at, but you know, like Phil was saying, this lender is gonna give you a $300,000 home. You know, ask your client, would you loan yourself $300,000? Of course they'd say yes, but anyway, so that's what happens, and then as soon as the underwriting conditions come to the processor, she goes back to the LOA, not the loan officer, and says, hey, I need A, B, C. So they go to the client, get that information, give it back to the LOA then gives it back to the processor attaches it to the condition and sends it back to the underwriter for final sign-off. So I know that sounds really smooth and easy, but it can take up to 2 weeks, depending on your client. So I like to remind the loan officer, because I meet with them twice a week. We go over all their loans in their pipeline. We go over what's coming into the pipeline, what questions they have, any new guidelines that have come in, we talk about. I'll say, hey, you know, how come your borrower hasn't sent me in his bank statements? And Phil will say, well, it's because they work until 6 o'clock at night and they don't have access to email. You know, so I always am asking them, how come this isn't in? Your financing appraisal deadline is in 3 days. How come there's no appraisal in the file? So I'm constantly watching these deadlines. And those are, I think, the two most important ones that you as agents care about is the financing appraisal deadline and the settlement deadline. So, but average right now, citywide is doing about 26 business days for turn times from contract to CTC, which means clear to close. And then you have your early CDs, you have the 3 days, you have all that. I don't even look at that anymore. I just, as soon as the contract is here and as soon as it's clear to close, that's kind of where I am. But don't be alarmed. I watch everything from that point on too. I make sure that the CDs go out to the clients. I make sure that they open their CDs because I get notified on every loan. And if I'll say, hey Phil, your CD went out last night, your bar didn't open it. And I know his LOA will stay on her email until 11 o'clock at night sometimes to make sure that his clients open that CD.
And CD means closing
Closing
disclosure.
disclosure. And if anything changes, the loan amount changes, their rates change, anything that has to do with the APR, that has to be redisclosed to the client. If it goes up an 8, then it's another 3 days. So, but if you have like a transaction fee, I know you guys have transaction fees, that doesn't need to be redisclosed. It's not included in the APR, so it can be added to the last page of the CD, and it's not a problem. So you're good there. Any fees from third parties, all that's not included. I don't know if you guys have done very many transactions yet. No, yes, you have. And did you have any issues at closing? Did you have any issues during your?
I just
Your
had one
loan?
yesterday that went really well.
Really well?
Yeah, we had to make one change after settlement that they needed us to change the address on, to match up with the loan, whatever, but
That was it.
that was it. It was a pretty smooth loan process. One question I did have though, as far as underwriting and how they work it, if they're working kind of like you were explaining, where they're going through it with a fine-tooth comb to verify every little thing. And I know every company is going to be different, but it seemed like some of the frustration with underwriting has come from when they ask for certain things. They're going through verifying, oh, we need this. So then we get those documents or whatever they need. And then they continue and, oh, now we need this, and oh, now we need this. Rather than going through everything and finding the 4 or 5 things that we need in one shot, asking for all of it. Is that possible to do that? Or why? I guess it seems like that's kind of a consistent thing that
No,
it's
that's a
like
good question.
back and forth, rather than here's all the 4 things that we noticed after we went through everything.
That happens. It doesn't happen on every loan, but it does happen. And this is probably what you ran into. Say you have 60 days worth of bank statements. The earnest money hasn't cleared.
that one.
It hasn't come through, so you have January to February, February to March, so you have your 2 months. Well, the earnest money doesn't clear till March 5th. What do? You have to get a printout from your bank because you don't have another 30 days. So you probably went down to the bank and you got a printout from the 30th or March 1st to March 5th. Well, in that 5 days, they had 15 deposits. 2 of them were not payroll deposits. 2 of them were one of these kind of deposits.
Right, okay.
That they're more than their income, or they're large enough, 25% is Fannie Mae's guideline, and FHA's guideline. If it's more than 25% of your monthly income, it has to be explained what it is. Which isn't a big deal, because a lot of times people say, hey, I loaned my brother-in-law $500, most of it can be explained. Well, if the processor doesn't look over the documentation and verify and say, hey, before I send this to the underwriter, this is what I noticed, that could be a problem. Maybe she didn't look at it. She just thought, oh, here's the 5 days, and didn't even happen to notice that. That's where it goes to the underwriter. The underwriter comes back and says, what is this? If you'd already explained it and that was already in the file, no problem. She would have signed it right off and no problem at all.
And with that, if the underwriter has everything, can the underwriter just go through everything? And if there's
Yes.
that one point that they need, rather than it almost seems like they find as soon as there's something they need, they stop and wait for that thing to come in, and then they continue on and stop and wait for that.
No, we don't do that. Our
No?
underwriters don't do that. No, they will,
Okay. So I
they
think
get the
that's
file back
been
in.
the frustration
Yes.
most of the time. So
And I know there are lenders out there that do that and they say, oh, red flag, stop, it's
Yeah.
back to you.
it just doesn't.
No, ours don't. They'll finish out the whole condition list. If there's any other conditions, they'll recondition. But most of the time, it's that one little thing that they've caught or said, hey, we noticed on your updated pay stub, there is a deduction. It's not taxes. What is this? We had one last week. The bar had just started a cafeteria plan, and we just need it explained. So we just said, hey, this is my new cafeteria plan. I just was able to enroll in it. The underwriter said, no problem, write me a letter. Done. Signs it off, goes to clear to close. So it's just explaining the kind of funky things. For the most part, loans just come in and they go out. I don't even have to worry about half of them. There's just those select few that have the layered risk borrowers, and as you do many transactions, you'll get used to seeing things. And self-employment it can be tough. It can be really tough and challenging. But you know what? If you just stay happy and you just stay positive and you say, hey, this is a roadblock, but don't worry about it. You got this great loan officer, he's gonna walk you through this. His company, they're great. No big deal. We'll get it done, and if there's any issues, I'll let you know. Instead of always being like, oh my God, my deadlines, and we know your deadlines, and they're very important to us. And so we don't want anything to happen in the meantime either that we can't overcome. So.
Any other questions for Penny, Paul?
I was just gonna say, what's the advantage, and you kind of alluded to it, the advantage of having your own underwriters versus maybe a company that does not have their own underwriters?
Here in our branch, we actually have our own. We have 2 underwriters that are just for us. So you get used to the way an underwriter underwrites. They have their hot buttons, which they always pay attention to certain little things. So if you already know what an underwriter looks at all the time, you can already be pre-screening your files to know exactly what they're going to want in the file. And that helps us out a lot because we don't just get this random person underwriting our files and going, well, we don't like this appraisal. Well, you don't live in Utah, so you don't understand the market. I don't know how many times we've had to go back to people saying, you don't live in Utah. We want a Utah underwriter to underwrite this because they're more familiar with the markets and everything that goes on in Utah. So it does help. It helps a lot, especially because they're on our turn times or our time zones. So if they're working 8 to 5 instead of on the East Coast and they're already 2 hours ahead of us, it sometimes poses problems when we work till 6 and they're already gone at 3. So we have found that our loans actually go a lot quicker, and so when our corporate office has a turn time of 72 hours, we already know that ours is still 24-48. So it helps for us quite a bit.
Okay.
Any more questions?
So let's say we have a buyer who they feel like they're ready, but they really don't know what they don't know. What are some really important, baseline qualifying questions that we should be asking buyers in order to help them understand what they don't know?
That's a
Do you
good
know what I'm
question.
asking?
You know what? One of my biggest things is the 2-year rule.
Okay.
If you say, hey, if they say, well, we want to buy $300,000 loan, and they say, well, what do you think I should need to be aware of? Say, have you been on your job for the last 2 years? Have you been renting for the last 2 years? Have you been living with your mom for the last 2 years? The 2-year thing, because that's a very big thing, especially on your automated underwriting findings. If you can show you've been somewhere or you're working somewhere for the last 2 years, it's stronger than the borrowers that have been on and off their jobs 3 months here, 4 months here, 6 months here, 2 months here. It doesn't show stability. So if they're there at least renting for 2 years or at their job for 2 years, that's a plus.
If they don't, if they say, no, I've been moving all over the place, what kind of reassurances can you be?
I would say, can you, you'll have to fill out your application, be completely honest, and then say you're gonna need to write up a letter of explanation, why you've moved around. Maybe, the husband's in the military. Maybe he's had to go from, place to place. Maybe someone just got divorced and everything's final and she's moved to Utah because she wants a new start. You just need to be able to explain what's been going on.
But just because they don't have a 2-year work history at a job does not automatically disqualify them from.
No, it does not. But FHA has new guidelines on that too. So if you have a borrower in the last 2 years who's been on changed jobs 3 times or more in the last 2 years, you have to be able to substantiate why. Have they been going to school? Are they moving up in the company? Have they done any online courses to increase in income? You've got to kind of be able to see what the positives are about that. Maybe, they worked with a staffing company. Maybe they've been over here, but they haven't missed any time between. That's fine, because you can be able to document that. You just have to be able to make the loan make sense and explain what's been happening. So the underwriter says, hey, I understand that. that makes sense, you know, they've been going to school, they now have their degree. Give me transcripts, prove they've been in school for this, and it's not something that you say, oh, I want to get this done, so.
What are the rules or guidelines for commissions? Like as far as, you know, the 2-year rule or
Well, it depends, because you have new guidelines with conventional too, and FHA. But generally, standard speaking, you need to be able to be receiving them for 2 years. And they can't be declining. If they've been declining, then it's harder to use an average even for 2 years.
Because I just had thought it was always 2 years, but yesterday I talked to my client and we're talking, they got a conventional loan and he had only had this job that's all commission for like 15 months. And I had no idea that was the case. I just assumed because he got his loan, it's fine. And so then that brought up the question of like, well, I thought it was 2 years for commission, so I guess always.
It is, well,
Or-
they like to see a 2-year history, but if he has commissions for at least a year and they're increasing and he has a guarantee that they're going to continue, that's different.
And how do you prove that
A
you're?
VOE from the employer, saying, you know, we actually had one where the borrower, we had to get a letter from the borrower's employer that stated he will be guaranteed these amount of wages as long as he works for the company. And because there's no indefinite and it's for as long as he stays there, this is what they'll be, we were able to use that.
So like that wouldn't work with real estate, for example, like real estate commissions necessarily, would it?
Yeah.
Or could they
Yeah.
do that?
It should. As long as you've been receiving for 12 months
Yeah.
but the reason they have the 2-year rule is because how do you average what you make? Because, you know, this house you sell is this amount of money, this one's this thousand, this one's this. So your commissions are gonna be different, they're not consistent. Whereas a 40-hour a week, $40 an hour loan or paycheck is different. So you have those different layers of risk that you have to be able to substantiate for the underwriter and everybody else involved. Does that make sense?
Penny, thanks for your time.
You betcha. And if you ever need anything, let me know. I'm always here to answer questions or help out. And Phil knows that. So,
Thank you.
You bet. Have a great day.
Okay, so we've now gotten everything all the way through, right? Underwriter finally approves it, we're good to go. So now we gotta send it somewhere else. Okay, so we send it to the closing department. Okay, they're the ones that prepare the CD, closing disclosure. They're the ones that prepare the loan documents that are going to be sent over to the title company for your client to sign. They work with your escrow officer. The escrow officer works with the other side's title company to get all the fees to match up, get all the different prorations in there correctly, you know, for sewer, taxes, all sorts of things, okay? And generate this final closing disclosure, then the closing disclosure, after everybody's looked at it, I as a loan officer have to approve it, our compliance department has to, our closer does, and the same on the other side, and the title company. Once everybody agrees on the final number, that's when it's sent to your borrower, okay? As soon as it's sent to the borrower, I don't know how other mortgage companies do it, we're all over the borrowers. We'll get you involved if they're not responding. Because until they open that thing, that 3-day clock doesn't start ticking, okay? You have somebody that's like, oh, yeah, great, it's ready to close. They don't do anything for 3 days, guess what? You're gonna close for 6. Just the way it is. It's not our rule, federal rule, okay? So, borrowers come in, they sign, everybody goes hurrah, throws the confetti, and your escrow officer gets all those documents put together, and they have to send them back to our company. And they have to send them back because somebody's got to fund the loan. Okay, so it goes to the funding department. Okay, the funder reviews all signatures to make sure everything was signed correctly, they're all dated correctly, everything was filled out. If it's a VA, nearest relative statement was filled out, all boxes are checked. It's kind of like a quality control type situation. They have to get documents back from the seller's title company to review, make sure the warranty deed's been done, make sure they've signed their settlement statement, make sure that the credits that are going from one side to the other match up on both statements. And as soon as that all comes into alignment, then we send the wire. Okay, we'll send the wire to the title company stating you are authorized to fund and record. Okay, that's where it gets exciting. You know, if there's two title companies involved, let's say somebody's using Magellan and somebody's using First American, the seller's using First American. So Magellan sends the money to First American, it has to go through the Fed to get to their account, then they get the money, and as soon as they have the money, they disperse the funds to all parties, real estate commissions, our fees, all the proceeds that go to the seller, and they record everything in the county records. And as soon as that happens, boom, your buyer has his home, okay? You don't know when he's gonna get in based on what you put on the closing on your rep sheet, but we're still not done because we have one more department, and that's our shipping department, who is in charge of taking everything after it's over and done with and sending that file to the final investor. Okay, they're the ones that are going to service the loan. They're the ones who eventually give us the $200 or $300 or whatever $1,000 back, because they're going to take over the servicing rights of the loan. And the biggest thing is they're the one that looks over everything with a fine-tooth comb to make sure we did our job correctly. Okay? They're going to look through and see what the appraiser did, what the title did, what the loan officer did, what the processors, the underwriters, the closers, the funders. Is it all compliant with TRID? Is everything as it should be? Do I accept that underwriter's explanation? Do I accept the appraiser's valuation? All this stuff. And guess what? If they don't like that stuff, you know what they do? They go, we aren't buying your loan. Boom. It's a buyback for us. Now our company is out $200,000 or $300,000 until we can either cure this and cost a lot of money to have to relock it with somebody else and keep that rate if rates are going up, and then try and sell it to somebody else. So, do we do our homework? You bet. You know, if I lose a commission, I'll get over it. You guys lose a commission, you'll get over it. If a company has 5 or 10 buybacks every month, they're going out of business, plain and simple, okay? Citywide was the number 48 loan company in the United States last year. We funded over $2 billion in loans. That's massive. And it was a $500 million increase in 1 year. So we have over 600 employees. Everybody has a defined role. You can see that from this, and one thing I want to add to this, I've heard this statistic before, but it's somewhere in like the 90 people range. 90 sets of eyes go on every single transaction. Because you think about it, you know, you've got it. If you send it to one of your loan or your, what do they call them? Marshall.
Transaction.
Transaction coordinators. Okay, they're going to see it. Russ is going to see it. Your broker's going to see it. Whoever cuts the commission's going to see it. You know, escrow officer, escrow assistant, searcher, appraiser, whoever reports that to TRID. I mean, it just goes fingers and fingers in all of these different directions. The other side, the seller's side and all this. So it is a massive undertaking, and the one thing about it is people have asked me a lot of times what I do for a living, and I don't tell them I'm a loan officer, I tell them I'm a logistics officer. And it's true, it really is true, because we have to manage this whole process. Even our own people. I mean, I have no problem walking upstairs and sticking my foot in somebody's rear and going, this needs to be in today, okay? You have to hold all these people accountable because we're working for you, we're working for your client to make this thing happen in a timely fashion. Because my job, when you hand me a contract, is you're saying, Phil Fiddler, I am giving you my paycheck. I would like you to hold it and give it back to me in 30 days. Okay? If I'm doing that, I'm doing my job. If I'm not, you probably aren't going to ask me to hold your paycheck. Okay? So anyway, that's kind of it, guys. There's all sorts of nuances and yes and no's depending on loan programs and borrowers and credit scores and credit history and all these things that play into it. But overall, this is the process of what happens once you walk in and hand me that REMC. So we're all over there. If you have questions, we'd love to work with you and help you guys out. And I hope this wasn't too boring. And I hope you guys have a great day. Okay?
Awesome.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
What are the conditions that you choose for who's on the title? Or how the title is vested?
Well, typically there's like two. You're either joint tenants or tenants in common.
No, but I mean, what are the conditions? Does it depend on the loan package? Does it depend on how the person buying wants it?
Yeah, it's the buyer chooses how they want to take title.
Even if one of the people may not be on the loan?
Well, no, okay, for us, whoever's on the loan is gonna be on title,
Right.
okay?
Can other people be on the title?
No, not until after it closes.
Yeah, so like closing or settlement yesterday, he was on the loan, but then both the husband and wife ended up on title.
Right.
There's just an extra document at settlement.
Yeah, I'm doing a loan right now, wife's got crummy credit, husband's got good credit, okay? We're doing the loan, and the husband's the only one that has income. Well, obviously, it makes sense to do the loan in his name because they're gonna get a better interest rate, okay? So we'll do that, we'll close the loan, because he's the only one whose name's on the loan, and then at closing, they will have them do a quitclaim deed, changing title from him to him and her as joint tenants, okay? So our deed to him will be filed first, and then this one will be filed second, okay? Actually, it'll be our deed and then the deed of trust, which is the mortgage, then the quitclaim deed. So we're clear in title that he's the one we're going after if we have to go after somebody, She's got the security now and knowing if something happens to him, she's gonna get the property. She'll get stuck with the mortgage too, but she'll get the property, okay?
Which, quick question on that, and I hadn't heard this till recently, so it might not even be true, but I had heard like on a Utah housing, I think it was, maybe it wasn't Utah, but there's some loans that like even afterwards, if you had done that, put like the wife on, I had heard a situation, they came back and said, you gotta take them off, they can't be on even title. You heard that or?
I have not heard that.
So maybe it was one of those not so true.
It doesn't make sense
Yeah, it makes sense
to me, because the way that we require things to be recorded, it's gonna be the deeds in Russ's name, the deed of trust is coming right behind it, which gives us the security for the property for this amount to Russ Orchard, and then Russ and wife and husband and son and daughter go on. Doesn't matter.
Well, that's kind of what I thought, but
It's after the fact.
But even then, still after the fact, after that point, if something happened to him, she would still have to qualify for a loan and would not automatically.
No, she won't have to qualify for the
So
loan.
It's just passed on.
Yeah, I mean, what had happened in that case is the wife's either gonna be able to make the mortgage payment or she's gonna call one of you guys to sell the house.
Yeah.
You know, that's the bottom line.
Okay, how do you work out, like, if you want to help out your daughter, you know, and you put her name on as well as, you know, on the loan as well as ours? No, is there anything different that you would do, or?
You mean put it on your mortgage?
Yeah, well, when we buy, I don't have a mortgage,
Like
but
to co-sign?
yeah, co-sign or something like that, how does that work?
There are loan FHA is a perfect example. I mean, as long as they have credit scores, and in some cases, they don't even need a credit score if they can show, you know, like rent receipts, cell phone bills, car
Yeah.
insurance, 3 forms and stuff like that. You can be on there as a non-occupant co-borrower, and as long as you can qualify with the current debts that you have and you can
Yeah.
qualify for that payment, and you've got the income to support that and the assets for whatever's needed for down payment, then you can both be on the loan. We used to be able on FHA, after 12 months, if your daughter had made those payments consecutive for 12 months, they'd let you get off title. They don't let you do that anymore.
Oh, so you have to keep on the title?
You'd have to do a refinance.
Okay, well, it's not for a couple years, so it's just.
Yeah, but and that, you know, that's obviously a great credit builder.
Yeah, that's what I was
For
thinking
people.
too.
Yeah, I'd recommend, you know, any of you that have kids in the 18 to 20-year-old range, put them on a credit card with you. I mean, you gotta get them,
My daughter has her own credit card.
hopefully you put them on one that you got a good credit score on. And then threaten them if they're bad, that you'll put them on something else if they don't. Quit being wise guys.
Oh, she's pretty good, she's
Yeah.
leaving for 18 months next month, so.
So it seems like several years ago that the whole process of like approving someone for a loan could be a lot messier, like you had a lot more play in, I mean, giving people loans who had no money at all. And so how much play is there in like approving people for loans who don't really qualify? It's not my situation, but I'm watching a friend like who's trying to qualify for a loan, so
Not that much.
it feels like, yeah, that's what I mean, just the things that she told me that the person she's working with for financing, like for instance, she says they feel like they offered way too much on a home, and he was like, oh, well, if it doesn't appraise, then we like buy you points and we ask them to give you less closing costs, but they don't have money. It was very messy, and I was like, I don't feel like there's that much play, but then I feel like I sound stupid if I'm going, I mean, I know I'm not supposed to be like a professional in loans,
Well,
but.
if it's on a property, I had one last week, home appraised. It was listed for $325. It was a multiple offer. My client got it by offering $330 and asking for $5,000 in closing costs. Appraisal comes back at $325. Okay, so the seller is like, sorry, if you want to cancel. We got backup offers. We can take anything we want. Real estate agent says, all right, well, we'll do $1,000. I'll give you a gift of commission of $1,000. She knows him really well. You know, a lot of times you wouldn't do that, but and they're like, well, we will be bringing in less because of that $5,000, so that'll be another $1,000 or so. And they came to me, you know, what can we do here? And I said, okay, I locked you guys in at 3.75%. If you want me to bump your rate to 4 1/8, I will get a credit because I'm selling you a rate that is above what the par rate is. And for doing that, I can get $3,800 that I can then apply to offset your closing costs.
So that's what he's doing.
Yeah.
See, and those, the way it's explained by a layperson is confusing.
Yeah.
So I need to hear it from somebody.
Yeah, I mean,
She doesn't even know what he's doing.
whatever the
so.
situation is, I mean, we haven't, you know, I'm like Russ, I've been in this business forever and I hear new stuff all the time. But in most cases, we have had that situation happen before. And we know what the options are.
Okay, well, that's.
Whether the parties choose to take those options or not, that's up to them. But we can say, all right, here are your options. That thing didn't appraise. You can either bring in an extra $5,000, because appraisals and transactions are the lesser of sales price or appraised value. You can negotiate it, try and negotiate it with the seller to get them to drop it. In a lot of cases, when you're not in the seller's market like we are, that happens. But in this case, there's still people standing there chomping at the bits to buy this house. So they're like, sorry, buy it or we'll move on to the next person. Okay? So that's where you start massaging things and going, all right, well, you're gonna save this much because you're bringing in less here. Ron will give you this, I can get you that. Your cash to close is gonna be roughly the same thing, and are you good with that? And they're like, yeah, let's go. So addendum goes out, purchase price reduced $325, seller closing costs are now $0. Okay, then we're closing next Tuesday. So every situation's different, and that's why I would encourage all of you to work with people that are experienced and know what they're doing. Okay? All right, I'm out of here.
Awesome.
All right, thanks guys, appreciate your time.
Okay, unless you guys have anything specific, we'll be done, or unless you want some extra training.
Well, I'd like to hear a bit more kind of agent perspective, like they came in and talked a lot about the guts of what's going on behind that. And this sounds like a lot that can scare a lot of buyers away into just wanting to stick with renting and not having to go through those hoops. So what kind of assurances and conversations should we or can we have with our buyers about,
Great question. Yeah,
here's
so-
how we're gonna help you, we're gonna take care of you.
yeah, so ultimately, yeah, thank you for bringing it up, because I didn't want you to know all this stuff so that you can go then tell the clients, because for exactly what you're saying. But I want you guys to understand it. I want you guys to be able to know it so that you know what is going on, because for me, like even still today, I wish I would have been here for this whole thing, because some of this stuff I'm looking up here going, I'm gonna have to go back and watch the video to hear what he said about it, because even seriously, a lot of this stuff I'm sure I have never even heard before. Meaning, like, I typically approach it, so to answer the question, the way I typically approach it with them is I just wanna make sure that you are using a lender who really is gonna get the job done because of all the stuff you guys have heard about now. Because for me, going back when I first started, and even still today, 20 years later, my biggest frustration in this business is the loan officers. Because they have so much control, as you've seen, over if this deal goes together or not. And it's exactly, I love the way Phil said that. I'd never heard it before that way, but like, you're taking your paycheck and handing it to this loan officer in a sense and hoping you get it back after the end. And what you will notice in this business, the biggest frustration for me is when the client shows up saying, oh, we've already talked to somebody and we're already approved and ready to go. In that scenario, how I would approach it with them is I love to just say, you know what, you're free to use whoever you want for your loan, but because I've never worked with that person before, I at least want you to talk to Citywide as a backup, because here's what I mean by that. The advantage that you have of using somebody who's located there in your office like that is they see you on a daily basis. And when you have a question, you can, instead of calling them, you just walk in and go, hey, Dallin, so what's going on with my loan? And they know they're gonna have to see you again versus, and I'm telling you, guaranteed you're gonna have this happen. Even though I'm telling you like how to try to avoid it, it's still gonna happen. But this other lender that they say, because a lot of times new agents are afraid to say, no, I want you to talk to this other person just as a backup, is because they're afraid that the client's gonna wig out and go buy with somebody else. And so you'll just let them go with whoever that lender is. And that lender, you'll call them and say, so how's everything going? And again, I wish I'd been here to hear more of this, but how did he talk much about like how once after the loan app's done, I mean, well, he at the very end, he was saying he's kind of the logistics guy, but unfortunately, there's a lot of loan officers that just hand it off and then kind of forget about it until they hear either, hey, we're approved, or hey, we got a problem. And I recently had one that it was a scenario that it was a friend of mine's son buying the house. They had said, oh, we're using this other guy that we know from baseball for the loan. And I said, I've never worked with him before. I'd prefer you talk to at least as a backup. Oh, no, he's done stuff for us. It's great. It's going to be awesome. Well, we put this property under contract, and then after about 3 weeks, I called to say, hey, how are we looking for closing the next week? And he says, oh, which all along, when you call, I always call weekly. Hey, checking in. And, oh, yeah, everything's great. We're good. All of a sudden, he goes, hey, we got a little bit of a problem. And it was exactly one of the situations Phil just said. She had no credit because they were newly married, so she just had cell phone bills and stuff. But turns out they couldn't use that, so we're going to switch them over to FHA now. And to me, it was all this stuff of like, you should have known that the day you took the loan out, not 3 weeks later, and at least checked into it and stuff. And so because of that, they ended up having to bring parents on and have them get on the loan. It all worked out, thankfully, but after 2 extensions and all this stuff. I mean, so really, like, I'm a long way of answering this question. Ultimately, I just kind of approach it more with them in terms of, look, I just want to make sure that we're with somebody that's, let me sum it up better. My job is to make sure you get the house. So for me, I don't really care what lender you use, but because my job's to make sure you get the house, I at least want you to talk to Citywide as a backup, because then that way we'll at least know if this other person falls through, they've already got your stuff in place and we can hopefully get it done pretty quickly. And why I like to do that is then when they talk to Citywide, that Citywide loan officer is going to be more likely to tell you the truth than somebody else. Meaning this other loan officer doesn't know you and they just, hey, no, everything's good. Versus a Citywide person, and they're not going to disclose stuff they shouldn't disclose, but they're going to at least go, this is going to be a tough loan. And at least I can know, even if they're using this other person, if they say it's going to be a tough loan, I can go, okay, don't go cashing that check in my head till it's done, you know? Versus if they do it as a backup, look at them and go, oh, they're going to, oh yeah, this will be a slam dunk. If the client then chooses still to go with this other person, I at least can rest easy that it should be a slam dunk for them too. And if it's not, then bam, we'll transfer it over. So I really don't get into a whole lot of this beyond just telling them, look, I'm not the expert, but I have good people that I've worked with, and so I want you to go talk to them and you know, use whoever you want, but at least talk to these guys. Does that help?
Yeah, it does.
How to explain it? Because yeah, I don't get into all this stuff.
Because if you think about, like, for first-time home buyers, they're going from signing a rental contract into this. And so I just wonder what the conversation of assuring that kind of a person looks like.
Yeah, and ultimately, I really, for me, seriously, I put it more just into the, you know what, I trust this loan officer, go talk to them, they're gonna take care of you. And
they're trained to assure people, like.
And then that's right, they take them through the whole process of understanding it, so.
Well, and I think like having somebody like Citywide, it's really nice because like what you're asking, I mean, you're asking like the question of there's a huge population that is like, nope, don't wanna commit, don't wanna stay. Because I think there's like a fear factor too, like, oh crap, I forgot to pay my credit card bill and my mom always told me, you know, like I didn't do that. And so, and so you really have to kind of like persuade people like, hey, if you're not in a good place right now, then at least talk to somebody because they'll help you figure out your path. And if you just, like 6 months from now, you might be in the same exact place and you do want to buy. And so why not meet with somebody just to see where you're at? They'll give you some options, they'll give you some ideas on how to get your credit on track or what you need to be putting away every month or because people like, they don't have a plan.
And did he talk about it all when they have somebody with bad credit, what they do?
No.
Cause they will use credit repair companies, like, so if somebody's saying, hey, my credit's not good or whatever, Premier Credit is typically who they'll refer them to, and Premier Credit is good at going through and saying, putting together this plan to improve the credit, and or if some of the stuff's not legit, saying we'll help you even get that stuff cleared off, and they'll put that together and try to help.
Well, and people think they need to know all of these steps.
Yeah, you know.
And then it's really like, no, just go talk to somebody. They'll just walk you right through it
and
all.
For me,
they'll never know.
Like I said, my point for you guys was I just wanted you to be able to see here's all the stuff that goes on. I mean, you have a little bit better understanding why it takes 3 or 4 weeks now to kind of get some of that stuff approved. Because cause for a long time, for me, seriously, I'm like, once you get it and verify the information, why can't we just close? I mean, it's like, yeah, why does this need to be like this 3-week process? I mean, get it done, you know,
But it
so.
is important because like I had this with my recent buyer and she she wasn't mine, she was on the other side. But apparently she wasn't turning in paperwork, but then she was like pushing at the end and it was like, but we need, 48 hours with the operations manager and 48 hours with the underwriter. I mean, when that's
Yeah.
4 days right there
So-
and she wants it tomorrow.
So see, for me, here's what I wanted you guys to have, so now when that client does say they wanna use this other loan officer, that you at least now can call and ask some of the questions has it been through processing, has it been through the operations or you know what I mean? What stage are you at in the process of this on the loan? And at least if they say, I mean, typically they'll just say, oh, it's in with the underwriter, when it really, like you say, might be in with the operations or whatever type of a thing, so, anyway.
Also, as a comment, if you haven't seen The Big Short, go see it.
It
You
is
gain
good.
an appreciation for how thorough this is now, knowing what happened.
I haven't seen it yet, but I've heard
It's
about
really
it.
good.
You can get on Xfinity.
It has lots of swears. so
Yeah, it's got all the swears, but
Well, it's a mortgage
you'll
business.
appreciate, yeah,
It's
exactly.
it's why nobody ever recommends it from the
Well,
front.
and it's why she was
We all
saying
know.
she used to drink, like.
Yeah, it makes you appreciate their thoroughness now.
No ninja
Yeah.
loans.
But and that's the thing, is cause that is, those were good times, we enjoyed it, but back when it was just like, oh yeah, just tell us what you think you qualify for and that's good enough and we'll give you a loan for that and it doesn't matter anyway, cause your property value will be up, so if you can't repay it, you just sell it. I mean, yeah, those were great times. So anyway, so I guess give me some feedback though, just and if you want, I'll turn off the recording, but was that helpful, not helpful? I mean, is there something that this particular class of every one that we do, I've been still trying to kind of get it fine-tuned to like, this is what I want to have happen, and I think today finally, at least in my mind, I wasn't here, I gotta go back and watch the video, but I feel like it's kind of more what I wanted them to be teaching.
So you're supposed to be keeping in contact with your buyers at least once a week.
Mhm.
How often do you think you should be in contact with your?
So great question, depending on who the loan officer is and how much you've dealt with them, if it's somebody you've never dealt with before, I think once a week would be to call and asking, where are we at in the process? Where is the loan at in these different stages? Meaning, like, here's for me, the biggest thing that I always use as my indication of is this loan coming together is, have they ordered the appraisal yet? Because they'll end up paying for the appraisal if the loan doesn't go through, so they typically wanna make sure, have a pretty good feel that this loan's gonna happen before they'll order the appraisal. So that's probably the biggest thing that I would say is depending on how, if it's a loan officer you know and trust and you've used them a ton, like your wife, right?
Yeah.
So, I probably wouldn't worry about it, but if it's not, I would be calling weekly and just saying, hey, where are we at? Do we have conditions? Has the underwriter seen it? Have we ordered? Really, the very biggest question is, have we ordered the appraisal? Because if they haven't ordered the appraisal yet, they're still not sure, in my mind. Now, once they say they've ordered the appraisal, I usually go, okay, I can take a little bit of a breath now and relax that it's probably, they're feeling pretty good that it's gonna happen, or, and that's still not 100% like I say, because I've seen where they've ordered the appraisal and then we have issues afterwards too, but way less likely once the appraisal's been ordered. So yes, depending on how well you know the loan officer and how much you've worked with them, I would call weekly and even the ideal is when you can not get the loan officer but get the processor, the person who's putting it together, because they'll usually just tell you whatever you want to know kind of a thing. And the loan officer, oh yeah, everything's great. And it may not, well, think of it similar to us like with Phil bringing up the TCs. Like, once I turn something over to the TC, I kind of just go, okay, they got it, and I hope they get all the paperwork, and I move on to kind of working towards the next day. I mean, that's not 100% true, but that's kind of what the loan officers, they turn over to the processor. In their mind, it may be great. Great may just mean the processor hasn't called me and said, well, there's a problem, So I like sometimes even I'll call and ask, can I talk to so-and-so's processor? And then I get them and say, hey, can you tell me where we're at on this loan? And they'll usually go, oh yeah, we're, blah, 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 whatever. And then I'll ask, have you ordered the appraisal? When do you think you will? Are there conditions? They can't, because of the TRID and all that stuff, the CFPB, they can't disclose all kinds of stuff to you, but I found sometimes they will tell you stuff that they maybe shouldn't be, and not, I don't mean that in any bad way, but it's like just helpful for me if they'll tell me, oh yeah, we got these conditions and here's what they are. I mean, they can tell you there's conditions, they probably aren't supposed to tell you what they are, but sometimes they do. And that's great, cause then I use it even as like, I'll go and help you get that from the client, call the client and say, hey, so that's another great question probably to ask is, are there any documents or anything you're waiting from the borrower? And then that I can help with, cause then you can go back and say, hey, we need to get this or that taken care of, so. Good.
So, Penny, yeah, that's right. She said that like their processing time is about 26 days right now. So, when we are working with a buyer who's putting in like a highest and best, how aggressive can you be with those deadlines? Do you just push? Like, do you just push with the low, or do you move that deadline later when you find out like, crap, this isn't gonna happen?
Yeah, no, good question. That's another thing that is kind of a good thing to kind of know, cause you heard Phil say sometimes they will go up and kind of push, but they also gotta be a little careful with that because there's you're dealing with human beings, meaning like if I'm the underwriter and you're the loan officer and you bug me, and you bug me, and you bug me to the point that you really bug me, that I may be like, I'll get to that one this afternoon. Seriously, these are human beings we're dealing with, so.
Send chocolate.
Probably not a bad idea. So can you get them through? So, yes, but the loan officers have to be careful in terms of like the number of times they're up saying, hey, I need this one pushed through. So I would say I would work with the loan officer in terms of that. I think it's a great question to ask prior to writing the offers. What should I put for my deadlines to make sure that we're gonna get this through? And work with them on, hey, here's the scenario on this. Is there any way we could do it? And they may say, let me go find out and see if I can push it through a little quicker, so. Good deal. Okay, so you guys didn't give me any feedback. Was it good, not good?
You didn't
Was
turn
it-
off the video.
Oh, do you want me to turn
No,
it off first?
I-
I will. I'll turn it. I will if I need to. So, but was it good, helpful, not?
I wish you would have done a few more of the technical kind of details, like you did answering the questions at the end about the 375, but if you want your closing costs, then your interest rate's really gonna be 481. I wish you'd done a little bit more of those technical details.
Well, yeah,
Good, because that's just it. I'll
Real
pass it
life.
on.
and kind of like how it can play into our negotiating, the different elements of a loan, like because we're wanting the strongest offer possible, what leverage do we have in a loan, they're gonna understand things that, I guess from a sales perspective, it was a lot of back end stuff, but so much of it, the loan officer of all of this is kind of the salesman of the loan, it seems like.
Exactly.
And I feel like if we could have talked a little more about the sales side of it,
Okay.
that would have been
Cool.
nice.
Call back in, we have 20 minutes.
I know, get back in.
We have more.
So I'd like to think about the listing side of it. If you've got a listing and now you've got buyers that are coming in and they're figuring this all out, what can you or should you try to wonder about if the buyer that you're, what should you be talking to your seller about with this buyer and the process and what should they be aware of?
Okay,
What
good.
can you assure them with
Mhm.
as a listing?
Yeah, and which actually is a very good point of when I'm on the listing side, I do just tell the client the truth about this. Like when we're talking about the offer, when we receive it in and I'm going through and explaining the dates to them, I do explain on that finance and appraisal date that, let me tell you what that means, because essentially they could cancel based on we don't like the loan at any time up until that deadline. So we want it to be as short as we can, but at the same time, as you can see, it is kind of a legitimate reason that they need some time to do it. And so from that standpoint is just, I just prepare them of, it's never done until it's like this to the shipping department kind of a thing. It's never done till it's really done. And I know that's crappy, but it's better to prepare them that, until we get this all the way through, there's always the chance that it could come back, so then the point with that is, and again, I know there's negotiating in this, but it's making sure that the client is comfortable with, if last minute this deal falls through and you end up with the earnest money, is last minute $1,000 gonna be enough for you to feel like you know, yeah, it's crappy, but at least we made up for it on this end, if that makes sense. I mean, like, I had one that, this goes a long time ago, my sister and her husband helped them sell a condo, and it fell through last minute financing, but we gotta keep the earnest money. I think back then it was about $1,000 too on that one. And my brother-in-law was like, we don't really have any place to go anyway, it's totally worth it. Go get another one that falls through for us, you know? And he was like, this is awesome. But it was kind of like, you do wanna make sure you've got enough earnest money on that. Now, the flip side of it is, you know, I mean, you're not gonna have people willing to give you $10,000 on a $100,000 home for earnest money either, but.
And the typical rep, see the listing, the seller pays half the closing costs?
No,
No.
great question. Well, depends on what you mean by half. The seller will pay their own closing costs, the buyer pays theirs,
Okay.
unless there's an addendum that asking this seller to pay the buyers. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Because, in fact, thank you for bringing that up, because I've seen times where agents will write an offer just assuming that's just customary that the seller pays for the buyer, and then last minute they're like, we just got the closing disclosure and they don't have that much cash to bring in, and I just thought that was included, so yeah, no, it's, the seller will pay their own, the buyer pays their own, unless you ask in an addendum for them to pay.
When my aunt and uncle's selling their home, they decide not to sell it anyway, they're in Layton, and they're from California, and the realtor told them, oh, no, since you're selling, you need to cover all the closing costs, and she asked me, is that right, you know, later on, and I said, no, it's not.
Yeah,
You
it's
know,
actually
so-
pronounced Leighton.
I'm
just-
No, there's no T in there.
I'm just teasing. Yeah, so yeah, it's a very good point. Alright, any other feedback, questions, anything? Okay, well, thanks for being here. Have a great day. Go get some more appointments. Make some money, right?
I just need help with my.
Oh, that's right, yes. Let me grab, do you have it on your computer?
Yep.
Okay, pull that up. Let me grab mine before it gets to the.
Turn off.
See you later.
Okay, yeah.
Turn off the class.
Perfect.
What are you gonna say?
I'm gonna say
You're not-
mean things. Just kidding.
I wanna
I'm
make
totally kidding.
Oh, do you? Sorry.
I just don't want,
Should we?
I'm gonna stand right here and talk about it, but I hate it when
Go
I have
on,
to
I'll
watch
turn it
and
off.
there are
I'll
like
turn it-
38 questions during break time.
You hate that? Usually people tell me they love that part.
I
Did
was
you
the
notice I
person
just-
that said I loved it and I was making fun of it.